Hey everyone, this podcast is part of Story Mode, the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. You can support us and gain access to other great exclusive podcasts at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
I'm turned a little down. All right, hold on. Let me turn myself a little bit up.
Don't get turned down. Get turned up.
Turned up. Gotta
Up.
get turned up.
Yeah.
All right, we got this.
Yeah.
Oh, hi everyone.
Hello.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
We just watched The Wrestler.
The Wrestler.
The Wrestler.
The Wrestler.
Fun movie.
A lot of people told me that I'd never wrestle again. And that's all I do. You know, if you live hard and you play hard and you burn the candle at both ends, you pay the price for it. You know, in this life you can lose everything that you love, everything that loves you. Now, I don't hear as good as I used to, and I forget stuff. And I ain't as pretty as I used to be. But God damn it, I'm still standing here, and I'm the ramp. As time goes by, they said he's washed up. He's finished. He's a loser. He's all through. But you know what? The only ones who are going to tell me when I'm through doing my thing is you people here.
Fun movie for fun times.
For some fun people.
Everybody, cheer yourselves up. Go watch The Wrestler. It's Thursday. We're a little late putting this out.
Because of the world.
Exactly. We're a little behind, but that's okay. That's okay, Tom.
It is okay. It's fine.
It's fucking fine,
It's all
guys.
fine. Everything is going to be fine.
That makes this we just watched classic.
Yes, there you go.
It is a Thursday, and it's because of Patreon, which is specifically our Patreon subscriber Ozzy, who gave us this movie. In Ozzy's defense, I don't believe they knew the world would be falling apart when we covered The Wrestler by Darren Aronofsky.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you, Ozzy. This I mean, all right, let's get into it. Tom, you've seen this movie before?
I have seen this movie like every Darren Aronofsky movie.
Uh-huh.
I have seen this movie once before.
Right.
And I reached the same conclusion the second time I watched this movie.
Right.
Which is that this movie is really good. I never need to see it again.
Classic Darren Aronofsky.
Classic Aronofsky.
All right, this movie is really good. I might need to see it again. We'll see.
This one is yeah, I'll say this is more so than like a Requiem or Black Swan.
I do want to watch Black Swan again. Black Swan I don't find depressing. I think it's like a horror movie.
It is
more
a horror
than anything.
movie. Yeah. It's brutal.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, actually that one maybe, but like generally his movies are just incredibly upsetting, like on a deep level.
Yeah. This one is, I find to be one of his most upsetting because it's his most real.
Yes.
Like The Fountain is another one. I'll watch that again because it doesn't feel real. Pi doesn't feel real. Requiem feels very real, but
yeah.
It's also his most normal in terms of the way he shot it.
Yeah, and I think that I think that's absolutely intentional, and it's why it also feels the most real. It's shot almost like a documentary.
Yeah, there are scenes where I'm like, I can't tell if he just went out with Mickey Rourke and just had him screw around. Like, obviously, he cleared they're filming in locations where like they had to get permission, but a lot of the moments where he's like behind the counter at the deli. Mm-hmm. When he's at the dollar store, like it feels very much like improv.
It probably is.
Yeah. For people who don't know, this movie It's such a good idea for a movie. It's about an aging wrestler who is like a WWE style wrestler, who's now kind of a has-been, and he's just like trying to make a living.
Yeah, it's
still doing wrestling matches.
It's if you know anything about professional wrestling,
Yeah.
this is a depressingly familiar story because
Right, it's kind of important.
Right, because it gets said a lot, and nothing keeps being done about it, which is depressing. But
Right.
there's no wrestlers union. They don't get health benefits. They don't get 401ks. So it's just like once the character's name is Randy. Once Randy is kind of too old to be a main eventer on television, he's kind of fucked, and he can't really do anything but continue to do these small indie shows and these like small fan events.
Right, or he has to get a job.
Well, yeah, but the only kind of job he can get is like working at a grocery store because, you know, he spent 30 years wrestling. He doesn't have other skills.
It's this perfect storm because he's also the idea that pro wrestling is seen as funny. Wrestlers are often funny on purpose.
Yeah.
It's part of the thing. But it means that he's also like this kind of subject of ridicule.
Right. Like his manager at the grocery store treats him like a clown, like speaks to him like he's a clown.
Right, because it's this weird occupation where like you give your whole body to it. Mm-hmm. You get nothing in return.
No,
and people ridicule you.
Yeah, it's entirely dependent on how wrestling fans feel about you, and it's like, I don't know, it's depressing on an existential level, but like the character himself, I don't know, it's you could view it as like sad and pathetic and being a has-been, but it's like, well, these fans all still like him.
Oh yeah,
and they come to see him, and he gets a little bit of money out of it.
But
he also
that's his conflict,
right? And like he says at the end,
doubt.
he says at the very end to Marisa Tomei before he goes out for his last match, is that he's like, the only place I get hurt is out there. Like in here, people like me and they respect me, and like I feel like a person when I'm in the ring.
Yeah, the only place I get hurt is out there. It was like, oh fuck. Mm-hmm. Darren Aronofsky, you fucking asshole. And like, I think we'll go through the plot a little because I have a feeling people haven't watched this movie. They
haven't seen it or maybe haven't seen it in a while because it came out at the tail end of 2008 in limited release just to make awards season, but really came out in 2009.
But that scene where he says that to her, and then he comes out and his intro music is Sweet Child of Mine. And I was like, oh, fuck you, Darren. Why are you doing this to me? Don't do this to me.
Because he hates you.
Yeah, because he hates us.
And he wants you to feel bad.
Exactly. God damn it, Darren. Yeah, so it's really about a lot of things too, because it's about athletes in general, but it's very specific to wrestlers because they're the only athletes that
wrestlers don't have a players union.
It's about this person's passion for his job, but it's also about the fact like finding happiness, which I think is a lot of Aronofsky movies kind of go they touch on passion, obsession, and happiness, where like there's a point in this movie where he doesn't need to wrestle and he's happy.
Yes, he almost has it all together, and then things don't go the way he wanted them to with Cassidy, with Marisa Tomei's character, and he sort of fucks it all up for himself.
Yeah, it's about addiction. Like he's addicted to this. He's addicted he gets to high off of the wrestling.
And it's also he's not. They don't focus so much on the drugs. They do have one scene where he has to buy about $1,000 worth of painkillers.
Yeah,
and performance enhancers from another guy just so he can keep moving in the ring.
Right.
Because again, wrestlers don't have health care plans. They're on the road, I think, for about 300 days a year. Like,
right. Mickey Rourke made me sore watching him. Like, the way he acts, he really expresses having a sore body. Like, after the first match, which we don't see, he's just like, he's moving in this way. Like, it's just like, you can feel his muscles just aching. It's what happens is he has a heart attack.
After a hardcore match with the Necro Butcher.
Oh my fucking god, that was amazing. The way they shot that, where they show the aftermath first.
Yeah, and then they cut back to through the match. Damn.
Yeah, they cut back. What I love about it is it's showing that he doesn't understand this world as much, because the scene before is him going to the dollar store and he's getting props for it. Yeah. And he's getting like tinfoil things. Like,
yeah, and like pans that he can like hit other guys in the back with.
Yeah, like kind of wholesome items for wrestling.
Yeah, where it's like they're still hitting each other, but it's not he's an old school dude.
Yeah, exactly.
The big part of the plot is that he headlined Madison Square Garden in 1989.
Right.
In this world's version of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So he's like an old school guy. He's like, I think there's a pro wrestler whose life this is very similar to, and I think it's Greg the Hammer Valentine, but I can't remember exactly who it was, because somebody did speak out when this movie came out. It's like, yeah, this is really close to my life.
Yeah, this was some guys like, yeah, this was a really hard watch, Darren.
Yeah.
The fuck, man? Could you call me before you put out this movie?
Yeah. And then he gets in a match with the Necro Butcher, he's a real wrestler.
I figured there were some real wrestlers in this.
A lot of these guys are indie wrestlers that were working with Ring of Honor at the time.
Okay, and Mickey Rourke seems like he's doing the work too.
A lot of it. He's not in the hardcore match.
Okay, yeah, that checks out.
There's a couple of shots, like when they cut to a shot where Randy suplexes Necro Butcher off of a ladder through a table that's covered in barbed wire, and it's from behind, so you can see Necro Butcher's face, because he fucking does this all the time.
Right.
But you can't see Randy's face. I'm pretty sure he didn't do that bump.
Yeah.
But also, I'm pretty sure the barbed wire and the glass isn't real in this hardcore match, because they wouldn't let you do that in a movie.
I was about to say, the way filming a movie is, it would be way different.
However, he might have actually stapled that dollar bill to his head.
Yeah. That's entirely possible.
That's entirely possible, because he does that wrestler. I don't know if he's still working, but he did some crazy shit in the ring. Like this is a typical Necro Butcher match.
Right. So yeah, that's the idea, is Mickey Rourke, like, he's so happy in the dollar store. He's like playing with the clerk and stuff. And then they show the end of this match, and they're just covered in blood, and it's a fucking mess. And then they flash back, and you see Necro Butcher being like, "So you cool with a staple gun?" And he's like, "What?" And he has to, he's clearly never done staple gun stuff.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever done a hardcore match before.
Yeah, and so it's so fucking good, because it's this moment in his career where he's like it's like he feels despicable, or he seems to afterwards. Like, they're treating the injuries. It's a montage of them cutting from them treating the injuries to then showing how they got the injuries.
Yeah.
And then he's just alone in the locker room, and he's sitting there, and he looks like he's going to cry, because he needs this money too. He's kicked out of his trailer. So I think in that moment, he doesn't like wrestling.
Yeah, definitely. Hardcore wrestling has fallen way more out of fashion since this movie came out.
Yeah.
A lot of indie promotions won't do it anymore, because I think, for a couple of reasons. One, I think it became harder to get it cleared with the Athletic Commission.
Yeah.
And two, because I hope that it's more of a case of people thinking like, wait, this really isn't wrestling. This is like grotesque.
Yeah, everybody just feels bad.
This is just grotesque.
Yeah.
Like I'm not knocking guys like Necro Butcher because he fucking went out there and did some crazy ass shit.
Yeah.
that I would never do, but
Oh, yeah.
holy shit.
Oh yeah, it reminds me of Gigi Allen, where it's just like,
yeah.
wow, so punk rock, but seriously, someone should have stepped in.
Right, somebody should have stopped him. Like if anybody's
someone should have helped that man.
If anybody's been watching, what's it called, Dark Side of the Ring, the Vice series, this season they did an episode on a wrestler named New Jack who was with ECW in the 90s, and ECW was the most well-known and mainstream hardcore promotion. And just watch that episode on New Jack, man. If you guys haven't seen it, he did some fucking insane things.
So yeah, Mickey Rourke in that locker room, he pukes and has a heart attack.
It's a heart attack, yeah.
Yeah. And the doctor basically tells him he survives the heart attack, and the doctor's like, you can't wrestle ever
Well,
again.
he clearly had to have emergency bypass surgery. He's got
Yeah.
the scar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he's like, the doctor's even reticent to tell him because he's like, well, when can I start exercising again? He's like, if you do really mild stuff, it might be okay.
Yeah.
And then when we see him go for just a quick jog in the forest near his trailer, he like can't, like he collapses almost.
Right. He's very much not doing well.
Yeah.
And then the other devastating part is, so we haven't talked about too much about Marissa Tomei. She plays a exotic dancer that he goes to this, he regularly goes to this strip club.
Yeah, this one club.
And he clearly uses her as like a therapist. Like,
Yeah.
she gives him a dance and he's talking to her about his life.
I don't think that's that unusual, but yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. He's one of those guys.
Yeah,
like
it's the same. It's like bartenders do the same. It's not
Yes.
the same thing, but people frequently use bartenders in the same capacity.
But the realization is that after he has the heart attack, he goes to talk to her, and she agrees to go to his car and talk to him because he tells her he had a heart attack. And it's very clear. You realize the relationship here is that she's like the person he's closest to, and she doesn't consider him the same.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
It's a very an unequal relationship.
he's a very lonely man, and
He doesn't
she
have
realizes
anyone.
that. She realizes because this is just a customer for a while, and then she's like, oh no.
Well, it's twofold. It's clear he's just a customer for a while. There's a little bit more going on between them than that when we first meet them.
They're friendly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're friendly, and she clearly feels bad for him and also likes him because he's a likable guy.
Yeah, exactly. But she had a specific boundary with him,
Yes.
like she did any other customer.
Right.
And then she kind of has a choice to break that boundary or not, and she's spending most of the film battling with that.
Yes, and also there's she has like not the inverse, but her situation sort of mirrors Randy's, where we see frequently she's getting turned down for lap dances.
They have
and
very similar.
men are calling her too old, and I think Marissa Tomei was like 45 or 46
Right.
when
And
she made this movie.
We see a lot of her in this movie.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's the role,
Well, that's the thing, though.
and I think that's the point.
I was very surprised because in movies, when someone plays a stripper, they usually do movie rules where they're like in a bikini or something like that. You know what I mean? Like they don't normally, unless it's like a show on HBO, like it's normally like movie rules with that. And she's just naked in this.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
I think
bold.
I think it was important for the juxtaposition and the connection he's trying to make between these two characters, where they're both in professions that don't have health plans, don't have 401ks, there's no union or security for its workers, and they're both entirely dependent on just using their bodies until they're physically not able to do it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, it's a very clear connection.
Yeah. And yeah, they get people calling her too old, and the same thing that Randy's dealing with. Yeah.
And so, yeah, they form a connection a little bit. They finally hang out outside of it because he's also trying to reconnect with his daughter.
With his daughter, Evan Rachel Wood.
Yes. Which is a devastating arc.
That is the most painful thing in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be.
It's
because the
supposed to be.
daughter isn't wrong.
No.
And so it's
I think she's a little harsh, but it's completely understandable.
but it's after years of
It's
this.
after years of neglect and abandonment. Like, he straight up told her that he tried to pretend she didn't exist because it
Yeah.
was easier for him.
Yeah, he clearly abandoned this this daughter of his a while ago, and now that he has a heart attack, he's thinking about her. So he tries to call, and then ends up just going to her house, and she's clearly pissed off at him. So he goes with Marissa Tomei to buy something for her, and that's fucking. I love he chooses this bright green.
Of course, he chooses the stupid thing, but he
Yeah,
ends
the
up, he
thing
ends
a
up-
wrestler would wear.
Right? Yeah. He's like, see, it's got an S for Stephanie.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
He's like, yeah, it's pretty boss.
Yeah.
That's something else that is related to the addiction metaphor, is that he's trapped in time.
Yes.
Like,
well, they have.
he is. There's a couple references to it, but he's stuck in the 80s because that was his peak. That was the
Right.
best time of his life.
And so is Marissa Tomei a little, because they bond over how the 90s sucked.
Yeah, and how they really like he's constantly listening to 80s hair metal.
Yeah.
He has a Nintendo. Like,
Yep.
there's a scene like he plays with the neighborhood kids, which is sweet.
I would watch so many hours of Mickey Rourke wrestling kids.
Wrestling with neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
He calls them little maniacs.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Like, he has this one of the kids come over to play Nintendo with him, and it's this old Nintendo wrestling game, and the kid's trying to tell him about Call of Duty 4, and he just doesn't understand it.
It's so good. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, he's
Yeah.
just. Well, he
The hell,
has.
Nick?
He treats kids like he's a wrestler, where he's like, do your push-ups. Like, he does that
Yeah.
shit to them.
Well,
and
he's-
it's like you can
he's-
tell
he's-
he spent a lot of time talking
Yes.
to kids as a wrestler.
I was going to say, yeah, you can tell
Yeah.
he's dealt with kids his whole life.
Right.
Because kids like wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
It's especially in the 80s. Like, that was like the target demographic for like WWF in the 80s was children.
Right. And of course, yeah, he hates the 90s because he talks about Cobain. This is like
Yeah.
that pussy Cobain.
That pussy Cobain.
And you can tell, like, it's perfect because it's wrestling was where what else do they say? Like, why can't things just be awesome, or what? Like,
Something like that.
yeah, because the idea is that the 80s was this time where it was like everything's great in the media. Wrestling was pure in this way. And then 90s is like the birth of cynicism, or like that era of cynicism.
Well, the 80s is
With
also
grunge.
when... yeah. The 80s is also when professional wrestling...
It was at its peak.
It was at its peak, and it was also when they finally revealed that it was predetermined.
Ah, okay.
They did it in a it was a strategy of Vince McMahon's, so that they wouldn't be subject to the same regulations as a sporting event.
Right.
That's when they start calling it sports entertainment.
Right. And so, like, yeah, I feel like the 90s is also the era of wrestling's fake, man. Like that shit.
Yeah,
Like when we still thought that was a hot take,
yeah.
you know? So it's like, yeah, it makes sense that the 90s is just awful for him.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And he doesn't.
It's probably also when he abandoned his daughter, judging by her age.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like he just, oh, man, it's. I forgot about that scene where they agree that the 90s sucked is very significant, and then
Yeah.
they kiss.
Yeah.
And she's not sure about it, and they go back and forth with that. He meets with his daughter finally. He gives her Marissa Tomei is like, "How about this pea coat?" So he buys both, and it's genuinely adorable. And the daughter can tell because he gives her the shitty jacket first, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And you can tell she doesn't hate it, but she thinks it's funny. And then he gives her the pea coat, so it's very endearing. And they go to Asbury Park in New Jersey. That's an old abandoned casino. I believe Dan O'Brien is familiar with it.
The casino that they break into.
Yeah, I've been there. It's there was a punk festival there, and it was fucking awesome. It's like across from this place called the Stoned Pony. I saw the Addicts for the first time there. Doesn't matter. But what's cool is that if you remember The Sopranos, Tony Soprano has a dream where a fish talks to him, and that's when he first learns that Big Pussy is talking to the cops, and that's also in front of that casino. It's a great location. That area is but yeah, they break into the casino and they bond, and he's actually honest with her, and they agree on dinner. And but he's got to do cocaine and have sex with this woman with a fireman fetish. What are you gonna do?
Well, it's after he goes to see Cassidy again, and it does not go well. They get into a shouting match with each other. He acts like an asshole.
Right. Oh yeah.
And then he leaves and goes to a wrestling promotion to watch the show, and then goes out with the wrestlers afterwards to get drinks, and he just gets drunk and gets fucking high on coke. Goes home with this woman with the fireman fetish.
Yeah, she says we want to party like a fireman, and then it cuts to them snorting cocaine in the bathroom. And I'm like, what is this woman's deal?
Yeah, and then when he wakes up in her bedroom, and she just has posters of beefcake firemen all over her room.
It's like this woman with a very specific fetish that Mickey Rourke can fulfill for her.
And he starts to get out of bed and notices that he's wearing fireman boots.
Yeah. That's one of those moments where it's like, you didn't have to put that in.
No, but it was funny.
It was like Darren Aronofsky, like, let's liven the mood for a second here, because things are going to get dark.
Yeah. He's like, oh, I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
So yeah, he goes home and crashes and sleeps through the night. Like he wakes up and it's already dark outside, so he's missed his dinner date with his daughter.
Right, he's 2 hours late, and he shows up, and she's not having it, and she screams at him, and she says like, I never want to see you again, and we're done. And it's one of those moments where it's like, if you give it some time, she'll probably be okay. I mean, he's fucked up a lot.
Probably.
A lot.
And that's, it's...
But he could work it out. He could, because he is... I don't want to say he's a good person, because he's clearly done a lot of fuck-ups. But you understand him in this movie, so it's easy to sympathize with him.
Yeah, no, he's a likable guy. He's just... He's fucked up a lot in his past, specifically with his child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I don't know. I like I said, I thought she was a little harsh, because it's like, well, he was like 2 hours late for dinner. Like,
but it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know her life.
It's like, right, like this is like 20 years of neglect coming out right now.
Right. I know people who have very complicated relationships with fathers who weren't there, and it seems like a whole lot of I've never had that, but it seems like a very complicated situation with a lot of emotional baggage attached. Yes. So it's like, I get it. Yeah,
totally get it. And also, like you,
I also get the Marissa Tomei thing where she's like, I don't know if I have a kid. I don't know if I want to open my life up to this person, because I'm just exhausted. And then she sort of makes the decision, and then she's not sure, like, because he's a friendly guy, but he reminds me of like when I worked at a diner. There'd always be truckers who come in and they start these conversations, and at a certain point you're like, all right, man, like, I gotta get out of here. Because they're very friendly, talkative guys, but then you're like, all right, you're giving me way too much of your life now. And it's just like, it's a vibe. It's like, and Mickey Rourke does it perfectly. But yeah, it's this thing where like he can't quite get a connection. No one will. I don't know.
It's well, because they also, I think it has to do with the separation between real life and the performative world, because the other thing that he and Marissa Tomei share is that their professions are performative.
Right. They have
And-
to act a certain way.
Right. And part of her, she says as much to him, part of her hesitation with exploring a relationship with him is that he doesn't know her outside of the performative world.
Right.
And so she's like, "You think I think she says you think I'm this stripper, and I'm not. Like that's
Right.
I have a kid, I have a whole ass life that you don't
She
know
has a
anything
different-
about."
She has a different name, just like
Yeah.
he has a different name. And they have a weird there's a weird difference there where like what does she have him call her when she meets her?
Her real name is Pam. It's Pam.
Yeah, and he says like, what do I call you? And she says Pam, right?
Yeah, she does. She says Pam, and he's like, Pam, all right. And,
Whereas
and then she
yeah.
says, don't get used to it.
Right. He always wants to be called Randy.
Yeah.
And so there's I don't know. I think there's something there.
What's his actual name? Robert?
I think so.
It's like
and
Robert
so, like,
Randowski or something. I can't remember.
Right. And so there's like I don't know, there's a difference there with them where it's like he doesn't
Robin.
the lines
Robin's his name.
Robin, right. Right, because of the name tag.
Mm-hmm.
Where he like Marissa Tomei has a clear line drawn between her personal life and professional one, where
Yes.
Randy doesn't.
No,
Like
not
he
really.
wants to be called Randy all the time. He doesn't want to leave that world, but he has to like, and that's what a lot of it is that he's like embarrassed to be getting older. But after he has his heart attack, and when he's like, I think when he's like genuinely happy, is when he's embraced it, where he's like,
Yeah.
"Nah, I'm retiring." And
Yeah.
he's like, I get it. I'm old. I'm retiring. He's having a good time at the deli. He's like enjoying the job
Yeah.
because he gets to work with people, and he's like being very honest with himself. Mm-hmm. It's the dyeing of the hair. He lets his hair
Yeah.
change back, and he's like ready to sort of move on from that, and then he just can't.
Yeah. The things blow up with Pam Cassidy at the bar, and then he
Right.
fucks up his thing with his daughter. So he's like, well, fuck it. Like nobody
I'm
out here cares about me. I don't like he never says it, but it's clear he's hit the point of I don't have anything else to live for.
Right. Oh no! When he goes out in the ring at the end, it's an act of suicide.
Yeah.
He knows what's going to happen. It's about the idea that he's had this bubble that he's lived in that's comfortable. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the 80s. It's this world, and it's like he's still holding on to that. And the moment he tries to go out into the real world, he like tests the waters for a while, and reality is it's too much for him. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's you know, it's sad like that at the end. It's when he goes to that ring, you can see it on his face. He knows exactly what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Well, I mean, he's literally crying before he jumps off the top rope.
Right. And the speech he gives, and like he knows
Yeah.
he's going out there to his death.
Yeah.
And I cannot fucking believe that Mickey Rourke didn't win an Oscar that year.
I think
He was nominated.
He was. He won every other one. He won
Yeah.
Golden Globe. He won BAFTA.
I remember
he won Independent Spirit.
Sean Penn won for Milk, and I liked Milk. It wasn't the wrestler was better. And to the point that Sean Penn, if you remember, he gave his acceptance speech, and the first thing he said is, "Wow, not Mickey Rourke." Like,
Yeah.
he was like, "Really?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "What the fuck, guys? Mickey
the
Rourke was amazing."
The Academy doesn't like Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, that checks out.
They don't like him.
Yeah, but he won. He won
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
year. Like that was this performance is incredible.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's so good in it.
He's very. I mean, it's a thing that Mickey Rourke in general. If you watch his older movies, not so much now, but like he was always real good at being sort of natural.
Right.
And this is a very natural performance.
Yeah. They were like, after that natural performance, let's make you play a supervillain with whips
Let's
and
make you the bad
Russian
guy in
accent.
Iron Man 2.
Here you go, Mickey Rourke. Enjoy this bullshit.
Yeah.
He's great in that, but like, come on.
Yeah, but it's not
Come
much
on,
of
Hollywood.
It's not much of a role.
No, it's
Like,
not. It was
he
really
just-
not. He really committed to it too.
He did, yeah.
Like I know he like studied like Russian prisoners and shit. Mm-hmm. because he's, that kind of maniac. And Marvel's just like, just do a voice, man.
Yeah, just do a voice.
We don't give a shit. God, what a fucking movie. We haven't talked about his deli job. That scene, that fucking scene.
Mm-hmm. Where he shoves his thumb into the slicer.
You had the same reaction as me. It's like I covered my eyes, and because I gore doesn't bother me, but that's just the right combination.
It's because I've seen that happen in real life.
I worked at a pizza place and we used those, and it was always terrifying.
Yeah,
I'd never seen an accident, but it was just like, well,
it's just it's conceptually terrifying, but if you use the machine the correct way, your hands are never near the blade.
Oh yeah.
But if you got some clown, what I saw happen was, and I might have told this on a podcast already, but I was working at a sandwich shop where we had a deli slicer like that, and this fucking guy named Junior is cleaning the slicer, and he thought it would be faster if he turned it on and held the rag up against the blade.
Oh yeah, definitely faster. Things get, that concludes a lot faster.
It did. It concluded almost immediately.
What an asshole.
Oh yeah. He wound up getting fired shortly thereafter because he was already kind of useless, and then after you get your hand dragged into a meat slicer, you get even more useless.
Right.
So you know what? Just get out of here, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. As someone who worked at a pizza place, I know of that useless guy. The guy where it's like, oh man, you just gotta leave.
You just don't do anything, do you? But yeah, it was horrific. So, I had the tinge of a memory of this scene, and I was like, oh no. So yeah, I got up and paced around the room until I heard it happen.
Right. At least
okay.
it's coming because he fucking looks at it and he's like, fuck it. And boy, does he quit. What a legendary quitting of a job.
Legendary. Did you notice his manager is Todd Barry?
Yes. I did notice that. I noticed that a lot. I was like, this is weird.
Yeah, there's a couple of Judah Friedlander's in it too.
Wait, where?
He's one of the promoters he works with.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
It's some weird casting, but it works. Todd Barry was perfect.
Todd Barry.
First time we see him, he's whacking it.
Yeah, he's watching porn, and then he makes him go outside and knock on the door, and then hits him with the door as he comes out.
Oh, it's perfect.
He treats him like such an asshole.
Well, because he acts like he's a heel.
Yes, yeah.
That's what's great about it, is that it's it's just he's exactly the type of guy that he would fucking throw out of the ring.
Yeah.
And it makes it perfect. God, they do so much with. I love that they show all the wrestlers discussing what's going to happen beforehand.
Yeah.
And you kind of they show, and it's one of those things that's not indulgent. It's to show that he's a fucking professional, that this is not a joke,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What'd you think of the camera work? I noticed that you don't see his face until 6 minutes in, because a lot of the camera is following him from behind.
Yes, yeah.
And it's reflective of him going into the ring at first. Mm-hmm. And of course, when he goes into the deli job, they do the same thing, because it's in his head, he's sort of picturing it. You hear the crowd cheering. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because...
Yeah, it's very grounded, unlike a lot of his work.
Yeah.
And I think it's meant to evoke a documentary feel, because it's hey, here we're looking at the world of pro wrestling, behind the scenes, following this guy.
Oh yeah.
I thought the camera work was really good.
I thought so too.
There was a very sparing use of score. There's not a lot of score in this film.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it has to do with reality, because the opening credits, you think you're watching a different movie. Mm-hmm. It's very bright. It's got, I think,
it's all of his flyers.
Mental
it's
Health,
all of his,
I think.
Yeah.
And it's all his flyers, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you're with the audio of you're hearing the play-by-play calls of his different matches throughout the years, and that's important. It's supposed to be bright and attractive and seem fun
days.
Because it's his glory days, exactly.
And it immediately goes to this documentary style, very handheld, very dark.
cuts to him sitting in the corner of a children's classroom
Yep.
with his promoter coming up and underpaying him
Yep.
because the door wasn't high as he thought
And
it
it's
was
like,
going to be.
oh, fuck.
Yep.
It's that moment where you're like, all right, fucking strap in, everybody. Darren Aronofsky wants to bum us out.
Yeah, and then he goes home and he's locked out of his trailer and he can't wake the manager up, so he has to sleep in his van.
And only then is, I think, when we fully see his face. And again, it's the weird style where they're following him. Like, it's very much his back is often turned to the camera, and he's sort of moving away and looking away. And I'm not entirely sure what he's saying with that. It's definitely the style. I know what he's saying, which is that it's the fucking.
In a very grim interpretation, you could look at it as his death march because he's moving.
That's true.
He's moving towards his death.
Yeah, he's constantly moving away towards some. Yeah, yeah, it's fucked up.
Yeah,
God, in the moment right before he does what is it called? The
ram jam.
The ram jam. He looks up and Marissa Tomei isn't there anymore. Mm-hmm.
And he kind of you see it hit him because it cuts back to him and you see him like you see that shit pierce his heart.
Yeah.
Like he's like, nobody cares about me.
Right.
Except for these fans, and they only care about me when I'm doing my thing.
But he's not entirely correct, but you get why he thinks that.
You get why he thinks that, yeah.
Because Marissa Tomei fucking left work. She does. That's a part of this that's so both devastating and effective, is that she does in a movie what would normally be the romantic gesture that saves the day. Mm-hmm. She leaves her work. She drives there. It's like straight out of like Love Actually. Mm-hmm. And she runs to him and says, "Don't do this." And he's like, "No, I'm going to do it." And then it's like, oh, fuck. Because like any other movie, any other goddamn, like if this was made by like a studio, they'd be like, "No, he has to not do it. It has to be a happy ending." And it's the perfect moment where he sets up a Hollywood happy ending and then doesn't do it.
Yeah.
And it's so devastating and so perfect at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like this film. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'll ever see it again.
No, and I like. It's important to note that Marissa Tomei doesn't just quit and leave for him. Like she talks about it through the movie where she's about to retire, she's about to move with her kid, like, and she's having the same conflict that he's having, except she clearly makes the decision to leave that world. She's like, you know what? I've got a kid. I've got a whole other thing outside of this. I need to leave this behind.
Yeah, she's like, I can't hang on to this.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like she has the realization,
and I think that's her interest with him. Mm-hmm. Is that she's not in love with him really? She doesn't even have a thing for him. I think it's that she just really feels for him because she relates to him, right? And that ending is she's like, I need this person to not do this. Like, please don't do this. Yeah. It's like addicts. Mm-hmm. She's a recovering addict, and he's falling off the old wagon.
Mm-hmm. Off the old top turnbuckle wagon.
Right. It's you know where that term comes from? Mm-mm. There was in the olden days there was a wagon that had water on it for drunks. And so when you're on the wagon, you're on the water wagon. When you're off the wagon, you're at another bar. At least that's what I read in a magazine.
I know. I looked it up online
when magazines existed.
Yeah, you remember magazines, you guys?
Yeah, it's again Darren Aronofsky. He loves addiction, and he loves exploring it in a weird way. You know there's the math guy. He's obsessed with the math. He's addicted to math. Mm-hmm, and then there's Requiem, where they're addicted to I don't know what something.
Yeah,
there's probably
there's all kinds of stuff.
I'm sure there's some sort of addiction message in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then Noah, where he's addicted to making boats. He just makes boats.
He just can't stop making boats.
Yeah, he makes like 50 boats in that. It's fucked up. Mother, where they can't stop listening to Danzig.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that feeling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Any more thoughts on The Wrestler?
No, just that it's real fucking such a bummer.
Yeah, I think if you're like recommending it wise, this is such a good movie. And I know I've said this before. This is why I struggle with like BoJack Horseman, because everybody's like, it's so good, really depressing. And so I haven't watched it, because every time someone tells me it's great, they also say it's devastating. And so I get people who wouldn't want to watch this.
Yeah.
But it's so good and it's so devastating. So you got to be in sort of the right mood, but it's so good if you haven't watched it.
It's really good.
Yeah, you just wait. Just wait a little bit, I guess. Now's not the greatest time.
Now's not the greatest time to watch Incredible Bummers.
In a way, it was kind of distracting. The way, like, if you're trying to forget one pain, you can like burn yourself to forget another.
Oh yeah, no, I do that all the time.
Sure. It was like, oh, I'm glad I'm like tearing up about something that isn't reality.
Right. Yeah.
Just about poor Mickey Rourke. Poor Mickey Rourke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they should have let him get Iron Man after this movie.
Yeah,
he earned it. He
did.
They should have let him whip him. I guess I'll plug our Patreon. It's
yeah, sure. I mean, I suppose
it's patreon.com/gamefully unemployed. We have exclusive podcasts. You know, I'm also gonna plug our Guy-Light. Guy-Light, it's gonna be on Tuesdays. And we recorded a lot of it before all of this, so I apologize if we're like way too cheery. If that makes sense. Obliviously cheery, I guess. But maybe that's something people would like. I don't know. And our other podcasts, like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman and Fox Mulder is a Maniac.
There's that.
Yeah.
They're all larks.
They're all larks. Every single one of them.
Every single one of them is a lark.
We're real lark boys.
Yeah, we're real fucking larks.
Mm-hmm. We're real cut-ups.
Oh, gosh, everything is terrible. We have a store, but fuck it.
No, it's fine.
No, we're not doing that. Not today.
No. Couple of clowns over here.
Just a couple of clowns. I'm gonna honk my fucking nose.